Today, we are going to look at Korea a little differently. Instead of statistics and graphs, we are going to follow one young man through a single day. Let's call him Minjun. 28 years old, 2 years out of a 4-year university in Seoul. He is a fictional character, but the shape of the day he lives is the same day that countless young Koreans are actually living right now. "6:30 a.m. Minjun's day begins in a goshiwon in Noryangjin, a room barely 5 square meters, a bed, a small desk, and a single clothes hook. That is everything. Monthly rent, around $265. It is among the cheapest you can find in Seoul, but it still swallows nearly half the living allowance his parents send him each month. No window. The room stays dark even when morning comes. He silences his alarm, gets up, and heads to the 24-hour study cafe nearby. Noryangjin. Countless young Koreans spend 1 or 2 years here, some as long as 5 or 6. An entire city block packed with cram schools, goshiwons, cup rice vendors, and study cafes. For international viewers, the closest description might be a city within a city, built entirely for one purpose: passing an exam. It is a landscape that exists nowhere else in the world. Not in Japan, not in America, not in Europe. Only here, in Korea. 7 a.m. Minjan arrives at the study cafe. He is preparing for the grade 9 civil service exam. In Korea, sitting for this exam is not a simple career choice. Around 200,000 people take it each year, roughly 5,000 pass. An acceptance rate of 2 to 3%, a narrow door. Yet so many young people are fixated on it. And the reason is straightforward. In Korea, it is almost the only option that comes with a reliable promise of lifelong job security. Minjun did not always dream of becoming a civil servant. In university, he majored in marketing, and he had hopes of working at an advertising agency. But the reality that met him at graduation was different. He applied to over 50 large corporations and well-known agencies, and was rejected by every single one. He eventually joined a small marketing firm, but quit after 8 months. Monthly salary, $1,460. Overtime was the default. He could not see a future from where he was standing. Here is where the deepest contradiction of Korea's labor market comes into view. The gap between large corporations and small to medium enterprises is enormous. The average monthly income at a large corporation is roughly 2.1 times that of a small one. And it is not just the paycheck that differs. Benefits, job security, social perception, 2 entirely separate worlds. And once you start at a small company, the odds of making it to a large one are roughly 1 in 10. So young people try to be very deliberate about which rung they grab first. And the more deliberate they are, the more time passes. 11 a.m. Minjun sets his book down for a moment. He unlocks his phone and a Kakao Talk group chat lights up. The group is called Job Prep Study Room. 7 people all preparing for the same exam. Someone shares their mock exam score from yesterday. Someone else posts a screenshot of a successful candidate's story. Another person leaves a short message. Let's all keep going today. He glances briefly at his university friend's social media. Friend A got into a large corporation last year and recently posted photos from a business trip to Japan. Friend B started a startup and just announced receiving investment funding. Friend C sent a wedding invitation. Minjun quietly closes the screen. He tries not to compare, but in Korea, that is close to impossible. 1 p.m. Lunch is a cup rice bowl. Noryangjin streets are lined with stalls selling them for about $2.30. Inside the landscape of Korean youth poverty, these cup rice bowls have become a kind of symbol. Something to eat quickly, cheaply, to get through one more meal and return to the desk. Minjun eats standing on the street, letting himself catch a few minutes of sunlight. This is very nearly the entirety of his rest for the day. The afternoon studying is longer and heavier. Korean history, English, Korean language, and administrative law. He follows lecture recordings, organizes his notes, works through practice exam questions. 4 hours in the chair and the material barely moves. 5 months until the exam. He failed it once last year. This is his second attempt. If he fails again, he has not yet figured out what he will do. 6 p.m. He steps outside for a moment of air. Noryangjin's streets are full of young people dressed exactly like him. Tracksuits, hoodies, backpacks, and Americano in hand. Every face wears the same expression, exhausted but unable to stop. In Korea, these people are called 취준생, job prep students. The word is hard to translate directly because it doesn't match job seeker. A 취준생 is not simply someone looking for work. It describes a person who has placed their entire daily life on hold, suspended, in pursuit of a test, a pass, a result. There are approximately 700,000 young people like this in Korea, and some of them slip into something darker. Korea's National Statistics Agency carries a unique category in its data: just resting. Young people who report that they are neither sick, nor in school, nor looking for work, simply resting. That number hovers in the high 400,000s. What begins as a brief pause to catch one's breath after dozens of rejections becomes a gradual losing of contact with the outside world, until finally, the person stops searching for a job altogether. Minjun feels that fear sometimes, the fear that he might be drifting in that direction. 9 p.m. He returns to the study cafe. He plans to study 2 more hours until 11. But tonight, concentration won't come. He puts down his pen and opens a different screen, YouTube. A video catches his eye. A young man his age is uploading a development diary for a game he is building on his own. An indie game developer, not employed by any company, making a game from his room and selling it to the world. Minjun watches for a long time. Then he clicks to another video. A webtoon artist, a solo YouTuber, a one-person brand founder. In Korea, more and more young people are walking these new kinds of roads. As Korean content swept across the global stage, the gaming, webtoon, music, and video industries grew into an enormous job market of their own. And the government has been actively supporting youth entrepreneurship in new industries and startups. In 2025 alone, approximately $23 million in budget was allocated just to support indie game startups. Not long ago, barely a decade or two, success in Korea meant almost exclusively one of 2 paths: graduating from a prestigious university and entering a large corporation, or becoming a civil servant. But now it is different. The old formula that said there was only one right answer is beginning to crack, and through the fractures, light from new possibilities is starting to come through. Minjun thinks about it sometimes. Could I walk a different road? But that road still frightens him. There is no promise of stable employment. It is hard to explain to his parents. And above all, the fear of failure holds him in place. So he picks up his pen again and returns to the exam questions again. He can see a new path. He just cannot walk toward it yet, because the safety nets of Korean society are still too thin to catch someone who falls. 11 p.m. Minjun leaves the study cafe. Noryangjin streets are still lit up late at night, and the cram school signs are still glowing. Outside the cup rice stalls, young people are lining up for a late-night bite. Some of these young people will receive a passing letter and leave this street behind. Others will spend yet another year here. And some will eventually give up on the exam entirely and leave to find a different road. On the way back to his Goshiwon, Minjan stops for a moment and looks up at the sky. In Seoul's night sky, you can barely see any stars. But he does this every day. Just for a moment, looks up. Where will he be this time next year? Will he have passed and become a civil servant? Will he be preparing for another exam? Or will he have summoned the courage to walk an entirely different path? He doesn't know the answer yet. The day we followed Minjun through is not the story of one young Korean. It is the same day being lived simultaneously by hundreds of thousands. A generation standing before a door that is far too narrow. And a generation for which the social safety net is too thin to make walking through a different door feel possible. When we look at Korea from the outside, what we see is the gleaming landscape of K-pop, semiconductors, and cinema. But in the narrow alleyways behind that landscape, young people like Minjun are at their desks every single day. Korea's youth employment crisis is not simply a question of how many jobs exist. It is a structural problem with three interlocking parts. A society where a single choice can define a lifetime. A spatial imbalance where good jobs are concentrated in one city, and the absence of a safety net to catch those who try to walk a new road. These three things, working together, are what keep young people anchored to their desks in Noryangjin. Running beneath all of these stories is one shared current: competition and comparison, the most powerful engine driving Korean society. Next time, we will talk about that engine itself, the psychology of a competitive society, the force that keeps Koreans running without stop and exhausted without rest.